Hey everyone, it is Clint. Welcome to Sweetcast. I've been doing a lot of thinking on personal branding lately because it really has become apparent to me that writing comics, it's not just like you're making your own comics and that's the business in and of itself. It can be, but it is actually a lot more complicated than that. In fact, you often get in working relationships with all sorts of different people because of the creative teams that you've got to put together. And you're trying to sell books perhaps to slightly different audiences of people, depending upon what kind of story you want to write. Ideally, I don't want to always be writing for the exact same kind of story. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd like to vary it up a little bit and, try writing for younger audiences, try writing for more mature audiences. You get the idea. You want to do some different things. And so personal branding comes into that. It's pretty important, I think. So Dan Slott has helped me a little bit come up with what I think are some good personal branding techniques, or not techniques, but important, what I'm going to call my own code of conduct. I tweeted this out late last week because it's been something I've been thinking about, a code of conduct to sort of rein in what my personal branding is. Now, the more I get into comics, the more I realize that there are some really big personalities and there is a lot of ego. Dan Slott, respectfully, is one of those people. I say respectfully because I'm trying to, again, I'll get into that, okay? But Dan Slott on Twitter, notice I had to get to this through an alternate account because he's got me blocked for some reason, which he will explain. Here's the first one of, I think, 4 tweets where he went over some of his issues. So first off, he says, I got a lot of concerned accounts explaining to me how putting out one comic a year, charging $25 to $50 per issue, getting tens of thousands of backers to buy multiple copies while using a model that circumvents the retailers is somehow the best thing for the comic book industry. This is what we like to call in the business a straw man argument. He's made up this whole argument. Obviously, he's just picking out what he thinks. He's looking at the crowdfunding model that currently works successfully in comics right now, and he's basically just cherry picking the worst things of it and trying to paint the worst picture of it as possible. Now, a few things to keep in mind here is that people that have gone to crowdfunding, that are crowdfunding their books, one, they don't have the support of the biggest comic book publisher ever, and 2, they're not writing Spider-Man or any of these other intellectual property on any of these characters that are going to do the selling for you. Comics are expensive to make. It's something that I often hear people just say it's a labor of love. If you wouldn't do it for free, then you shouldn't be doing it. The thing is with comics, you're not doing it for free, you're paying to do it. It's below doing it for free. Especially if you're a writer, you've got to hire an artist. And if you want a good artist, you're going to have to pay for a good artist. It costs money. Coloring, lettering, all of that stuff. And it usually falls on the writer's shoulder. Now, if you have a job writing comics for a publisher, you're just writing comics. That's it. I don't want to belabor this point because your boy Zach already made a video on Dan Slott and this same exact issue, but I thought it was still worth pointing out. So this is where it started, and then he had more people that were annoyed with what was going on. So Dan Slott continues in this next one. I've run blockchains on the worst of a bad group. Those who unequivocally posted things that were racist, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, transphobic, and homophobic. When I see someone complain they got swept up by one of those blocks, I think, were you not reading that guy's posts? Here's the thing. I'm one of those people. I'm through an alternate account right now just to read what Dan Slott has to say. Okay? I follow a variety of people. In fact, I follow a lot of people that I disagree with very much on politics. There are people that I would consider outright communists or socialists or whatever that I also follow on Twitter because I want to hear what they have to say because they're in comics. Having said that, we all know that the people that he has blocked me for are not actually right. He's talking about diversity in comics, probably in this case. This from the get-go was something important to me. This is one of the reasons why I was annoyed with how comics are. I wasn't really on Twitter before last year, and so it seemed, like, who cares if they block me? But I can see if that is your route and your avenue to getting to hear about comics, or possibly if you're trying to work in comics, network and get to know people, this automatically blacklists you. I know they hate that term, but it's true. It blacklists you if you follow somebody like, let's say, Ethan Van Sciver, and you're trying to get into comics, like you're just following people in comics, you're now blocked from people like Dan Slott and who knows, probably a number of editors, all sorts of people working in comics that now you're no longer allowed to learn about, follow, perhaps get to know, have conversations with. All of this is prohibited from you now at this point. All right, so that is something to consider. Okay, next one here. Guy online to me right now, hey Dan Slott, you can't sell books. And then here's his snarky response. Hi, last year I sold 4 of the top 10 best-selling comics of 2018, 6 of the top 10 issues of America's #1 comic book company, and one of those was the highest-selling comics of the 21st century. But whatever. Again, like you kind of undermined your point in the same article here. Now I'll say, I don't really have a problem with people tooting their own horn. It might get a little obnoxious, but it happens all the time, and it's in sports, in all sorts of other things, and especially in comics. I'm thinking of Rob Liefeld for one. He likes to toot his own horn. I don't really have a problem with that in and of itself. But what is the interesting part here is just how blissfully unaware he is that, of course, if you're working for the best publisher, the biggest publisher, and you're writing the biggest titles, you're going to get the most sales. I mean, Dan Slott can be a very good writer. I've read some of his stuff that is pretty good. I've also read some stuff that's, not so much. I definitely wouldn't consider him the best writer in comics, and the sales he gets for sure aren't from him personally selling. I would be interested, though, if this is your claim, Dan Slott, go to Indiegogo, do your own creator-owned book, sell it at whatever price you want. I don't care. Any price you want, and get that thing done. And I want to see how much you sell. Because if you can sell under those circumstances, if you can outsell especially, then maybe you might have a little bit of more understanding of what it takes. And 2 for 1, your haters will have to eat their own words. So why not? Give it a try. Okay, here's another response now because people got annoyed by it. Now keep in mind, these aren't the people that he's blocked. These are people that actually have access to him that he has not blocked, and he's still getting the haters, so to speak. So he says, 1, tweet about how it's okay to crow about your own success, but it's a dick move to do that and take shots at someone else's who's lost a gig. And 3 tweets dealing with the crazy hater fallout for making said tweet, 4 if you count this one, in over 48 hours. Pretty much done with the subject, haters gonna hate. That was really confusing. That was a mouthful, but we went over the things that he was talking about, and how could anyone be annoyed by that at all? Any of those tweets, right? That was completely innocent and not obnoxious. All right, so this brings me to, I think, my first point on code of conduct. I was going to write something out and make it very official. Honestly, the truth is it's actually quite simple. And this is what people are telling me, but it really comes to 3 points. The first point is respect your readers. This means if I saw my readers in a public forum, like let's say social media or Twitter, if I saw them there, I would try to be respectful. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that they say, or that you actually have to listen to somebody just being disgusting or rude. Like I've had this before. People are just crazy, but it does mean if people have something genuine to say, you don't have to just be nasty about it. You should actually be respectful. It's that simple. First, respect the readers. Second one, I thought this was complicated. The more I delve into it, this is actually not complicated at all. Did you know? Well, I'm going to play this little video for you here. Celebrities get confused for each other all the time. I'm going to play this little clip and we'll talk about it.
And people see you and think, I know him. Did they ever come up and say?
Yeah, all the time. I get Mark Wahlberg a lot.
It's good.
And I've talked to Mark about it because he gets me. Like, people will come up and say, I love you in the Bourne Identity. And, so Mark and I have a deal. If we're mistaken for one another, we have to be as polite as possible. Because
have you ever signed an autograph as Mark Wahlberg?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, and you just have to be as nice as possible. And if they keep the thing going, you have to keep it going. So you... Yeah.
If you go, like, say, to a Pizza Hut or something.
Okay, get the idea. So this is actually not that uncommon of a thing. I've heard this in the case of many, many celebrities, and that is you watch this movie, you think you know who the celebrity is, and you see them on the street. You're not all that well versed. This shows like really people aren't that obsessed with celebrities, but they do kind of know enough to get you confused with another celebrity that kind of looks like you, kind of. So the common portion of this is that if a celebrity is confused for another celebrity, in this case, Matt Damon and Mark Wahlberg, they'll get confused as each other. And so you essentially have that other, your colleague, you have their reputation in your hands at that moment. When you're holding your colleague's reputation in your hands, the right thing to do is to not destroy their reputation. This is why I have such a problem with cancel culture. This is why, honestly, like when I got into all this and started making videos, I heard about your boy Zach, I heard about Richard C. Myers' deal with Antarctic Press getting shut down because of crazy people online and cancel culture, and creators like Mark Wade, who should have seen him as a colleague, because whether he likes it or not, he was getting paid at a professional level, probably above a professional level, writing comics. That is a colleague, whether you like it or not. And so even though you don't work for the same publisher or anything else, you are holding that person's reputation in your hands. You can disagree with other creators. I did it here. I disagreed with Dan Slott. This is why I thought about this so much. Like how much do I want to limit myself? I want to be able to have disagreements and have a reasoned discussion or a debate even, but going out of your way just to destroy somebody or ruin their career for whatever reason, I think that's wrong. And if celebrities can do that, if celebrities can do that for one another, why can't comics creators as well? All right, last but not least, this is the third point. So we did respect your readers, respect your colleagues, and third, and certainly not least, is to respect the story. This honestly, I think, has been the biggest thing. Nothing's more obnoxious to me. I noticed it several years ago. Whenever you'd start reading comics, you're ready for the thrill and adventure, and like reading Batman or something, and all of a sudden it becomes a lecture at your expense. All of a sudden, characters are acting out of character because they're pushing some kind of political agenda rather than telling a good story. This is unacceptable. So you respect the story, you respect those characters in that story, and you do your best to honor the tradition that has existed before. Now, if you're creating a new creator-owned character, I don't have a problem, and I've said this from the beginning. I don't care what kind of story you write. I don't care if you want to make it propaganda. That's great. It's your story. You can do whatever you want. When you're writing something that already exists, and this is my first chance of doing that. This is Thrilling Comics Murder and Mayhem. This is on Indiegogo right now. And I was hired to write an existing character. I wrote the Silver Streak in this story. Chuck Dixon wrote Cat in Black, and David Furr wrote Black Terror. Something that I really wanted to reflect, and there are things that I've been learning from a lot of people, listening to other complaints of customers. They've said that it is really obnoxious when you're not respecting the history from a character. So I made sure to read the comics for the origin of Silver Streak. I read anything that he explained his motivations to understand where he was coming from. And because it was a bit of a revamp, I had a little bit of creative liberty to sort of change a little bit of things and modernize things. But ultimately, I went to great lengths to try and make sure I was honoring that character and the legacy that already existed. So 3 things. This is simple as I can make it. I'm going to call it the code or whatever for now. This is my own personal code of conduct as a comic book creator. Respect the readers, respect your colleagues, and respect the stories and the characters in them. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you would add anything to my list or take anything out. I'm interested to know because, you can make up your own. It doesn't matter. This is just for me. And if you're interested in checking out Thrilling Comics Murder and Mayhem, it is on Indiegogo right now. This is David Furr's campaign, and I am part of the creative team, and so I'd really love for this thing to get funded and overfunded even for that matter. So I'm going to put the link in the description below. Please do check it out, and I will see you next time.